Hello and welcome to Roundabout-A-Story. My name is Gemma and today I'll be telling you a story called The Golden Cup, written by Polly Tisdale. One day, two peasants were digging for treasure. Now, although both these men are peasants, one of them is more well off than the other one. He's actually pretty well off as peasants go, and the other one is very poor, so the most poor peasant you could possibly imagine. So one day these two men are digging for something that they can hopefully flog at the marketplace, and on this particular day they're digging in the same field, in the same spot, on the same day, and they dig and they dig and they dig when suddenly they hear the clink of metal on metal, and they realize that there's something valuable in the ground. So they dig and they dig as fast as they can, and the stones, they're piling up behind them, and they dig and dig and dig, and suddenly at the same moment, on the tips of their spade, they each unearth the most beautiful golden glistening cup. So the well-off peasant stretches out his hand and he says, "Right, that's mine." And the poorer peasant, he says, "No, excuse me, but we found that together." So they both begin to argue, and they argue and they argue and they argue over the beautiful cup, and they decide that they need to take the matter to the judge. The judge, he'll know what to do. Well, they get to the judge, they tell the judge the story, and he actually doesn't know what to do. He actually doesn't have a clue. He looks at the two men, he looks at the cup, and he sees there's no easy answer to this case. So he has a little think, and he decides that he'll set 3 riddles. And in 3 days' time, whoever comes back with the answers gets to keep the cup. So he says, "Right, men, answer me these 3 questions. Number 1, what is the richest thing in the world? Number 2, what is the heaviest thing in the world? And number 3, what is the swiftest thing in the world? Come back in 3 days' time and tell me." So the 2 men look at one another and they go off in different directions. So the first man, the wealthy peasant, he returns home, he hangs up his hat on a little peg, and he sits down to a nice meal with his wife, and he begins to tell her all about his day, tells her about the cup, about the riddles, about how he has no idea what the answers are. And she smiles and she listens and she lays her hand on his and she says, "Husband, don't worry yourself. The answers to these riddles are easy." Meanwhile, the poor man, well, he goes home too, but he actually doesn't have a wife to go home to, as she died a few years ago. But he does live with his younger daughter, Laura. So she was laying the table for their meal, but there wasn't much. There was some water, some bread. Sometimes they have cheese, if they're lucky. And he actually didn't mention anything to her about his day. He didn't talk about the cup, he didn't talk about the riddles, he just sat there and he worried. He sat there and worried for 3 days, and his daughter noticed this and she says, "Father, you seem troubled. Is there something the matter? Is there anything I can do to help?" So eventually the father had to tell his daughter all about the golden cup, all about the riddles, and about how he wished he was just that little bit more clever so he could win the cup and change their lives forever. So the next day, the 2 men are due in court, and the well-off peasant is due to speak first. So he steps forward. He's feeling pretty confident, actually. He rolls up his sleeves and he says, "Well, Your Honour, seems to me that the richest thing in the world is the king, because he's pretty rich, isn't he? And the heaviest thing in the world, the heaviest thing is iron, because it's quite a heavy metal. And the third thing, the swiftest thing, I think, well, me and my wife reckon anyway, is our horse. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is faster than our horse." And he steps back, feeling, pretty happy with himself. And then the poor man steps forward, and he's desperately trying to remember what his daughter has said to him. And he says, "Well, Your Honour, it seems to me that the richest thing in the world is the earth, because she provides everything we need. It seems to me that the The heaviest thing in the world is sorrow, because it wears on man. And the swiftest thing in the world is the human mind, because it can fly to China and back in a moment. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is faster than our thoughts, Your Honour. And he steps back. Well, who do you think the judge awarded the cup to?